Hi guys, this is TD from allhailproductions.com. Recently I was asked about how to do the styling for my Forest Princess image. I wanted to kind of quickly go over how to do this. I don't know how long this video is going to be. This is actually my first time doing a tutorial, so please bear with me. I'll try my best. Alright, so here we have the image that we're going to use as our base. This is before taking it into Photoshop. This is with a little bit of toning and correcting done. But you really want your image to start fairly clean. You want your colors to be decent. The yellow in the scarf is popping, the green is good. Everything looks alright. If we zoom in, this is with the Nikon D800, so it's really sharp all the way around. It's, it is what it is. We have a little bit of blemishes. We'll fix all of that. So from here we take everything into Photoshop, and from Photoshop we get something that looks like this. So the colors are quite strong in the lips and in the eyes. A very big difference. Now these eyes may look completely fake to you, and they should. The colors just had to be strengthened because the image will be darkened a lot. To make everything pop the way that I made it pop. Now again, this tutorial is about how to make that painterly look and how to kind of seal it to make it look more realistic. So the first thing we need to do, if you want to go through this quickly, is we go to our tone curve. I have a few different pre-made presets that I have. The faded curve, which fades everything a little bit. It brings up the shadows, and it keeps your highlights about the same, but it really just brings up the shadows in 3 points. Anybody can do this. You just, I'll go back to the original, go back to linear. You take your base, and then you just bring it up, and then you make another point, bring it up. The first thing you really need to do is make sure that your midtones are where they are. You leave your midtones the same, and this is a little bit much, but anyway. So from linear, you just first make your mid-tone curve point and leave it, bring up your first point, next point, bring that up, and then maybe make another one. This is what I called my base fade curve. So the fade curve is a little bit tighter, but this is one of the curves that I use. But for this particular image, what I actually used was the sweeping fade. And this actually darkens things quite a bit when you look at it comparatively. So I have my fade, I have a painter fade. This really kind of changes things and makes them very gray. The other one that I have is the super fade, which is closer to the other fade, the regular faded. But the sweeping fade is very dark. And we start here and we bring down our highlights, we bring them down more, bring them down more. Our midtones curve is down quite a bit. And then we start to bring up our shadows, and our shadows are up in this kind of sweeping fashion. So again, we start with our highlights being 100%. Our next point is 91 at 83.9. Next is 79.2 at 65.9%. The next one, 64.8 at 52.5%. You can change these to suit your image the way that you want. These are just the way that I have them for this particular image. The other images in the set are a bit different, so tweak them the way that you want. This mid-tone one is 53.3 at 38.4. Our first shadow point is 36.5 at 28.2, 17.6, 19.6, and the last one is our 0 point, our infinite black point, is at 16.5%. So it's up quite a bit. Okay, so this is our darkening. So what we need to do now is start to brighten things up. So the first thing we do is take our temperature, and I'm gonna actually add a little bit more to the tint. I want these yellows to pop, I want these colors to pop, and this is really important for the image to stand out. Next we change our tint to, I don't know, somewhere around somewhere around here. The greens, we need the foliage to kind of come out, so that's why this is the way that it is. Now of course this is very dark, so let's start to bring a little bit more light into the image, and that's a little bit bright. I want to say somewhere around 0.90, somewhere around 0.90. Now it's, you know, fairly lit, it's nice and bright, but the highlights are still very bright. So we want to bring these highlights down just a bit, maybe somewhere around 48 or so, 40, 50, let's say 50. Contrast, we're going to boost up to about, I don't know, somewhere around here, maybe. Okay. Now it's very contrasty and, you know, lots of color. It's really popping a lot. And this is good. This is a good thing. It's a little bit dark, so what we're going to do is bring up the shadows. Okay, so we brought our shadows up to 100, and if we look at it, if we zoom in, it has that painterly feel. It's looking more and more like a painting, a little bit more surreal. It's not natural looking at all, and this is what we want. So next, let's take our whites and let's move them down, actually. And this will really help with that, you know, surreal kind of feel, that fairy tale feel, which is what I was looking for. And the blacks we are going to raise up. The blacks, raise them up about here. So now we have that nice fade in the shadowy areas. The colors are still very strong, and we're going to take care of that next. But this is overall what we kind of want in terms of our tone. Our tone should have somewhatly, I guess, pulled up blacks, and the highlights shouldn't be that high. They really should be as natural as you can get them, but still enough that your subject or whatever you want to be the key for your image still stands out. Now, of course, this is very, very saturated, too much even, and what we need to do is bring the saturation down. So we'll bring the saturation down, let's say around here. Now this is a little bit more manageable. It's not completely crazy, and it's, you know, a lot better. It's a lot smoother, I guess, is what I would say. The vibrance we can actually move down a bit as well. We'll pull that somewhere around here. Now this is really muted. The colors are very muted. The yellow in the scarf is down and all of that. And now we're going to move our clarity. This is really important. Move your clarity up somewhere around, I don't want to do too much, but somewhere around here, maybe around 17. So with the clarity, this is really good, especially when we look at the wolf. There's a lot of really good detail that we can see here. And when we go into our model, the clarity really brings out the accessories of the flowers, and the eyes don't look anywhere near as crazy as they did when we started. So this is really good. This is nice and muted, and it's really looking right. Now there's some fine-tuning things that I did in the original, I guess the final image, in terms of saturation for specific colors. And I'll just go over them really quickly. The reds were down a bit, somewhere around here. Orange was down a bit, maybe somewhere around here. There is some orange in there. Yellows were brought up quite a bit because this scarf is really important for the image. So the yellows were brought up. Let's see, somewhere, not that much, but the greens were brought down actually to somewhere around here. Okay, and this is looking really smooth. The yellows are pretty well visible, so this is looking good. Aqua is somewhere around. So now we go into our highlights. For the highlights, I think my hue was somewhere around 57, say 56, 57, and then the saturation was around 43. Okay, and this has that yellow tint, So I wanted the highlights to mimic a little bit more of the yellow to go along with this scarf. Now remember, again, this is for this image. So for your image, if you have something that's a little bit more green or purple or red or whatever color that is going with your image, you may want to do something a little bit more along those lines and not necessarily here. This split toning is just for this image. I can't say that enough, but it's just for this image. So next, my shadows were somewhere around here. Maybe it was a little bit purple. I didn't want them blue, so maybe somewhere around here, and yeah, somewhere around there. Okay, so that's not bad. And balance, I want to move this a little bit more towards this purple side. So the colors for this really work well, in my opinion. This is kind of what I wanted. This is really what I wanted, with the purple in the shadows mixed with a bit of the blue, and the highlights have that yellow orangish feel. So it's not quite warm, not quite cold, but it has this kind of regal feel to it, which I think the purple does very well. So moving on, the next thing that we need to do is, even though this looks really nice at 1:1, I sharpened it up quite a bit. So going down to sharpening, and if you look really carefully, I don't know if YouTube or wherever you're watching this can really make this show, but look at the detail in the folds of the eye, how they really come out, and the highlights really bring everything out. This is at about 36, so bring it back down. It's really smooth and kind of soft, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's really good, but for my images and for my style, I really like this sharp, some might say it's over sharpened feel, but seeing the texture, seeing the pores, and seeing all this, for me, and for my photography and for my art, this is what I like, and it's a personal preference. So this is really good. Actually going to bring the detail up even more, somewhere around here. And this might be a little bit much, but seeing these like fine lines and things in the lips and all of that, like that really kind of makes it for me. And if you're thinking about doing larger prints, having that extra detail might be nice. Most people won't see this. This is at 1:1, so even when you zoom out, nobody's really going to see this, those things. So, but having them really makes it for me, and it actually gives it a little bit more of that painted, surreal, artistic, kind of drawn out feel. Looking at the hair and some of the other details, going into here, you can see everything really nicely. That's the power of the D800, I guess. But having that is really useful, and it fits me well. So now that we have that, going down, I actually added a bit of noise reduction, and the noise reduction, I think, only brought it to somewhere around 10, not that much, 10, 11. You can barely notice it, but it helps out a little bit to smooth some of the things out, make these fine lines look not as rough as they did. Like this is like really, really sharp and very visible, so you don't want them to be that bad. Just kind of smooth it out a little bit, and noise reduction for some strange reason helps with that. So that's what that is. And getting on to the last bit, we have a very important part that I think for most compositing, even though this composite isn't that bad, is grain. And I think adding grain to your image really kind of blends things together. Color grading helps with blending things together, but grain also does it, and when you combine the two, it really makes things seem integrated and together. So I actually added somewhere around 20%, 20 grain. The size was about the same, and the roughness I actually brought down somewhere around here. So adding that little bit of grain and having a vignette, bringing the vignette in to draw the eye in, somewhere around here, is where our final image actually ended up. So this is what the final image pretty much looks like. And like I said, having that bit of grain added into the fur really helped. Moving this along, even in these blank spots, it really just kind of, you can see that transition between the fur in the wolf and this blank area. It really works. You don't see it so much when you pull out, but in the one-to-one, which is where I do a lot of my fine-tuning and making the final choices, it really helps. So depending on your image, you may want to add more grain or less grain or none at all. It depends on you. But this is how I got the painterly look, and this is the final image for the forest princess with the wolf. I hope this tutorial helped you, and if you have any comments or questions or any suggestions, since this is my first tutorial, you can just leave them in the comments or send a message. I'll be happy to try to help out. But thank you for watching, and until next time, take it easy.